Hey everyone, this is Kalegi with Tim Moore reminding you that SportsSpeak is now powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the one-stop shop for tickets to sporting events, concerts, and so much more.
Use the promo code SportsSpeak at checkout for $20 off your first purchase.
SeatGeek, let there be live. Now, on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of SportsSpeak Live, powered by SeatGeek, episode 145. I'm Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Well, we're in mid-August, so we are getting down to it. NFL season less than 3 weeks away. We did our Giants and Eagles predictions, and we kind of shamed another team in the NFC East. And we're joined by someone who hosts a podcast about that team, the Command Center's Joe Henry, joining us, Washington Commanders fan. Joe, thanks for joining us here on SportsSpeak.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. You know, it was always a huge inspiration to be seeing Eddie's podcast to get the Command Center going. So coming back to the inspiration's a nice deal.
So before we get to Washington, let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks. And it kind of relates because the Commanders announced that Sam Howell will be their starting quarterback this year. And I mean, he's essentially a rookie, only started one game last year. But the Colts going with Anthony Richardson, that's finalized. Panthers with Bryce Young. It seems like the Texans are going to go with C.J. Stroud. Tim, which one of these guys do you think might be the most impressive in their rookie year, if any of them? Because I was concerned by the fact that Bryce Young, it doesn't seem like he drops back that far, and he's going to get absolutely mauled in regular season games. And I don't know. I still have my doubts about Anthony Richardson. Do you think any of them have any promise for a good rookie year?
I was going to say, what made me worry about Bryce Young, if it wasn't watching that game that made me worry about him dropping back in the pocket, watching Hard Knocks made it 1,000 times worse. And seeing what happened during practice, in how the Jets defensive line was just getting straight through. And of course, the Jets are a top-notch defense, but in a preseason game where you don't really play any starters defensively and they're still getting through, it makes me worry about the Carolina Panthers overall from an offensive line perspective. But honestly, I mean, I like the mentality of Stroud to open up this season. I think there's a lot of positivity, and really the Texans need a lot of positivity and need a sense of direction moving forward. You know, I didn't think Davis Mills was that bad of a quarterback. But with that being said, his expectation as compared to CJ Stroud is very much different. And, you know, the one thing that I like about CJ Stroud is, outside of the mentality, is that I feel that he already has that understanding as compared to most rookie quarterbacks of how to protect the football, how to understand and put himself in good situations. And you'll only get better with that, obviously, as you get more reps. But compared to other rookie quarterbacks we've seen in the league, what's the big discussion we talk about? Protecting the football, making unnecessary throws. I haven't seen that yet from Stroud. But I will also say this one last thing. You know, I just don't feel like Anthony Richardson's getting enough of love. Maybe it's because the Colts organization is falling apart and everybody wants to see them fail. But I really do think sometimes it's those quiet quarterbacks that go under the radar and are doing some things and have some good seasons. So I'm excited to see what Richardson can do in Indianapolis. But right now, I would say Stroud is the likeliest to have the best season with pretty much nothing around him.
Yeah, Bryce Young, I'm sorry, he's too small. I know as a short guy myself. Big Joe Henry's 6'6", it's a little different. I'm 5'10". Bryce Young is not seeing over that line. Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield have both been flash-in-the-pan quarterbacks. Neither of them have had sustained success, so I worry about that with him. Stroud, I mean, the history of Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL isn't great, but it's improving. And Anthony Richardson, again, not really that well known. Joe, what do you think? Which of these three guys will have the best rookie season?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit of a hot take, but I think it's easily going to be Bryce Young, because I think the most important thing when you look at rookie quarterbacks is situation and coaching. Their head coach, Frank Reich, was pretty solid in Indianapolis for a long time, and he was great in Philly. So I think he just has a good understanding of offensive football and how to best help out a rookie quarterback. I mean, he helped Carson Wentz transition and be an MVP candidate from the start. I mean, obviously it took him a little bit, but he was always really, really good until those last few years. Like, Bryce Young is very, very small, yes, and I worry about that. But the Panthers' offensive line has a lot of young talent. They've got some steady, older wide receivers. I mean, Adam Thielen is a huge one to have as a safety blanket. The defense is good. I mean, we forget that this Panthers team almost went to the playoffs last year with an interim head coach. I mean, it was in a bad NFC South, but they still won a lot of games. The Texans and the Colts were the bottom teams in the NFL. and they've got new head coaches who have never really dealt with this situation before. And CJ Stroud's got a defensive head coach, so how good is his offensive coordinator going to be? Also, they don't have that much offensive firepower. I know they brought in guys like Woods and Dalton Schultz, but still, and Dameon Pierce is really just a power back. He's not going to help that much in the passing game. And then honestly, with Anthony Richardson, I'm very, very worried for what could potentially be a huge, atrocious rookie season. I mean, he struggled with accuracy in college football. How is he going to come to the NFL and be accurate day one, starting with Michael Pittman Jr. and really nobody else behind him? The Colts have no other receivers, and Jonathan Taylor might not even play. So I think Anthony Richardson really is going to struggle. I think he should absolutely be sitting and not start off as a starter. You could have made the argument that he should have stayed at Florida for another year easily, but he came to the draft. I think he's an insanely athletic prospect and going to be amazing in a few years if he has the right coaching. I'm not sure about this Eagles OC guy, Shane Steichen. You probably know more about him than I do, Eddie. I know you hate the Cardinals guy, Jonathan Gannon, but I don't know about Shane Steichen. But I think Bryce Young is easily going to be the best because he was always super accurate. And I think with rookie quarterbacks, it just comes down to accuracy. Like, they'll try to make plays and get picked off, but if they can deliver the ball easily, I mean, look at Justin Fields. He was so bad as a rookie because he was not accurate at all. And, it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. CJ Stroud is very accurate, but I worry about the coaching and situation. But it is an easier division now with Jacksonville on the rise, but I think it's easily going to be Bryce Young.
Well, here's the thing too with the Colts. I mean, and with Shane Steichen, the Colts have already hired an OC from the Eagles who worked under an offensive head coach, and it didn't work with Frank Wright. So
Well, it worked for a few years.
It's somewhat, but they've went through like 12 quarterbacks. So
yeah,
now you got another one. So we'll see what happens. But the Commanders have secured for sure who their quarterback is going to be. It's going to be Sam Howell. Tim didn't even know who their quarterback was when we did that episode a couple of weeks ago. Joe, let's start with this before we go through their schedule. Like, the first time I met you last year, you were hyping up Sam Howell, and this was 3 months before the Cowboys game. Like, as an Eagles fan, when they drafted Jalen Hurts, of course, I love Jalen Hurts now. I had doubts why they even drafted him. I didn't think he was going to be that good. I thought he was too much of a mobile quarterback. I didn't think his college game was going to translate to the NFL game. Why is there so much hype from Commanders fans about Sam Howell?
I think what it boils down to is just the lack of good quarterback play in the past decade or so. I mean, RG3 was a stud, but the injuries got to him. Kirk Cousins came and left, and fans had a mixed relationship with him because he was solid, but he'd never win big games. And then you draft a guy like, well, you have Alex Smith. You trade for Alex Smith, and he's the best quarterback the Commanders, Redskins at the time, had in about 10 years at that point. And he was very good, but then the injury comes. And then it's kind of just a circus. I mean, you draft Dwayne Haskins, who the coaching staff didn't even want, apparently. Rest in peace. But, he was out after about a few years as well. So then it was just all these different guys coming in, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke. Alex Smith came back for a limited amount of time. And the team has been so talented since Ron Rivera became head coach. They've added so many guys. I mean, on the defensive line, there's just so many fire-powered players, and the corners and the safeties. And it all just comes down to quarterback. I mean, Terry McLaurin, I think, has the potential to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL if he's not already that. And they just never have the guy to deliver that. So I've always wanted a rookie. When we went out and got Ryan Fitzpatrick, I was like, what are we doing? We trade for Carson Wentz. What are we doing? I hated all those moves because I don't see the point. We need a young guy. And I fell in love with Sam Howell when Diami Brown was drafted a few years ago. And I was watching Diami Brown highlights, the North Carolina wide receiver, and I was like, who's this guy throwing absolute missiles to this guy? And then I discovered it was Sam Howell. And I immediately wanted Sam Howell to be our franchise quarterback. And then obviously he slipped in draft stock, but I still watched him every game. And the thing about Sam Howell was the reason why he fell to the 5th round is kind of confusing. I mean, he was supposed to be a top 5 pick. You remember that, right? And his stats went down, but if you watch the games, he picked up the offense in the running. He went from about 100 yards rushing in his sophomore year to 780 in his junior year, and he added like 8 touchdowns on the ground. He's just such an offensive, fire-powered quarterback that we haven't had in so long, and I always felt that he was going to be the quarterback of the future. Like, he's got more pure talent than a guy like Carson Wentz had. Carson Wentz always had the arm strength, but he was never accurate. A guy like Taylor Heineke was always a career backup, career journeyman. I feel like Sam Howell has got the potential that we have not seen in DC since RG3.
So the real question is, do the rest of the Commanders have potential? Before we go through the schedule, Tim, I know you're chomping at the bit. Is there any potential?
I don't see the talent in Sam Howell. I really don't see what you're seeing. I feel that it's disrespectful to Carson Wentz, somebody who was a borderline MVP, and granted he was hurt, technically won a Super Bowl in his career. And you look at that, yeah, it didn't work out for Carson Wentz, but Carson Wentz at a point in time played elite football to an elite level. Taylor Heineke, as much as he's a journeyman, he is the reason why the Commanders over the last 3-4 seasons was at least somewhat relevant in the NFC East picture and what was a weak NFC East. Taylor Heineke, had he gotten a shot, would be a solid mid-tier quarterback, but nobody really gave him a shot because he never had real targets, which it makes me go to Washington. It's funny because this is where I disagree. You mentioned potential, right? When I look at that defense, all I've heard for years, potential, what happens? Everybody gets hurt. The problem with the Commanders for me is nobody could stay healthy enough to unleash your potential. When you look at the receiving core, outside of McLaurin, Scary Terry is good. He's an elite wide receiver. But outside of that, your best receiver that's come through that system is Jamison Crowder. That's not saying a lot. Think about it. In productivity of the NFL, who else outside of maybe the tight end position has played good enough receiver to put that team in a competitive level offensively? You misused Antonio Gibson. He's done now.
What do you mean he's done?
Antonio Gibson is not a competent running back in the NFL anymore.
What are you talking about?
What is Antonio Gibson going to do for Washington?
What do you mean? What is he going to do? He's been a productive running back since he got to the team.
Yeah, and what did he do? You benched him last season?
We didn't bench him. He was splitting reps.
Went on last season
when
you moved on to rookie running back.
Wait, what'd you say?
Did you see his numbers productively go down when you moved on to a different running back? Yes or no?
Brian Robinson?
Yes.
He got less carries, but he was still very productive.
But Antonio Gibson, his efficiency in the red zone, his options immediately went down, and slowly but steadily, he was used a lot less, and your offense overall was producing a lot less. Robinson made some explosive plays, but what did your receiving core do last season?
Well, okay. So listen, listen, Tim, you seem like a very nice guy, but I do think you're tragically ill-informed on the Commanders.
Informed on the Commanders. I hear this hype around the Washington team that really doesn't have a lot of anything.
Okay, so last
year,
year,
the reason why they're the laughing stock of the NFL outside of ownership.
Okay,
anything about this team. You're playing on a quarterback from UNC that may have a cannon, but you're comparing him to quarterbacks that, in my opinion, have been far better. In the case of Carson Wentz, was drafted far better. So what do you see about this team that says, wow, they're going to do wonders in the NFC East this year?
All right, let me talk.
Ron Rivera.
Are you going to let me talk?
But hold on, Ron Rivera, this is the other thing. You talk about all the potential he's had. I look at this group. If you're talking about all this potential, show something to me. Show something. You haven't showed anything.
All right, this is Sports Speak Live. Can I speak?
Sure.
I speak?
Go
all
ahead.
Right. Listen, Tim. All right, let me respond. Okay, listen. Anybody who knows me knows I don't like Ron Rivera that much as a head coach. I think he's way better suited for the front office, and I think that his defensive mind has faded the past few seasons. I think he's a great guy, but I don't think he should be the head coach of the Commanders. The only reason why I'm confident this season is in Eric Bieniemy. The defense. Listen, I get what you're saying. The defense comes into the season with an insane amount of hype, and then they fall off and they're just trash. But around the middle of the season, they always have a big catalyst game. It was the Steelers a few years ago. Then it was the Tampa Bay. Then it was the Eagles last year, where they shut down a top team in the league. And then for the rest of the way out, they're very, very great defensively. But at that point, all the hype is gone, so nobody pays attention. But if you look at the numbers, in the last 8 to 16 weeks of the season, Washington is a top-ranked defensive unit. The only major injuries we've had on the defensive side have really been Chase Young. Everybody else has stayed healthy. And me, Chase Young, I'm not a huge Chase Young guy anymore. I think he has all the talent in the world. But the main productive players on the defensive line are Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. And then the corners are pretty good. Cam Curl's a fantastic safety. Listen, Washington has consistently been in the playoff hunt for the past few seasons. Last year, we were 7-5, and then we played your Giants, and we got absolutely smoked in the tie. And then we got killed on Sunday Night Football. and that was just tragic. But we were 8-1, right on the cusp of the playoffs with Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz at quarterback. The year before that, we were 7-10 with Taylor Heineke. The year before that, 7-9, we went to the playoffs. You're saying that we're a laughingstock, and I completely agree. Washington has been trashed. They're not making the playoffs. They're not doing anything good, but they're always around that range where if they get a real good quarterback, I feel like he can take them to the next level. That being said, I don't see this season as that promising because the schedule is really, really difficult. But I do think that what Sam Howell has, I mean, listen, look at the numbers or watch the film. Listen, Sam Howell has a cannon, yes, but as a true freshman in the ACC, he threw for, I think, 36 touchdowns and 4,000 passing yards. He's been extremely productive in that his entire career. And also, when he came last year, they played the top-ranked Dallas Cowboys. And listen, I hate the Cowboys as much as you guys do, but the Cowboys are a pretty good team and a pretty good defensive unit, and he was fantastic against them. I mean, a dominating win from top to bottom. And I get what you're saying about Jamison Crowder, right? No receivers. The past few years, they've added receiving talent. Guys like Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, both have struggled with injuries, but the talent is there undeniably. Jahan Dotson makes some insane athletic catches. I think the injuries are mostly on the offensive side. The offensive line always gets banged up, and we've lost so much talent there. I'm deeply worried about that position. Logan Thomas, our tight end, is always banged up. But listen, what you're saying about Antonio Gibson is just not true at all. Antonio Gibson is the glue of this offense, and I always feel that way. He is the key between the middle passing game and the inside running. Brian Robinson came in the power back and split reps with him because in the 7-10 season last year, Gibby was awful as the only running back of the team. They need two backs. He can't handle all the power stuff. So they brought in Brian Robinson, and actually the team went up in wins. They were, I think, 1-4 playing the Tennessee Titans when Brian Robinson came back from injury. Then they went on that 6-1 run where they beat teams like the Eagles. They beat teams like the Packers. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? That middle of season run. And that was all when Brian Robinson came back and started getting the majority of the carries. Gibby is not the main running back. He's the second, third down back and the guy that is also like a slot receiver type. That's where he best thrives. So I think you're just completely wrong about that. We also have extreme receiving talent. It has not shown up besides Terry McLaurin, but eventually it will, hopefully. But I mean, the talent is always there. That's really where the injuries come in. And the defense, listen, the defense has to get it together. It's plain and simple. But the defensive unit always gets good around the middle of the season and then starts to get great when it's time for the playoff run. It's just the offense always fails it. So what I think Sam Howell offers in an Eric Bieniemy offense is the ability to take that level up. Like, listen, my main excitement with Sam Howell isn't just Sam Howell. My main excitement is the fact that it's Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell. Eric Bieniemy, I think, could have turned Carson Wentz into a franchise quarterback. I think Carson Wentz is deeply, deeply inaccurate. And having Scott Turner call him like throwing Hail Mary deep balls in the middle of the first quarter was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I think that this team's got a lot that you're just discrediting it for. And you forget the fact that Washington and the Giants were both fighting for that last playoff spot in the end of the season last year. And obviously
Right.
the Giants prevailed.
Nothing, no receivers, and Saquon Barkley was the heart of that offense, along with Daniel Jones, who could run. When I look at the Giants and how much better they have gotten compared to Washington this offseason, and considering the fact that Washington had a lot of opportunity to go and make something happen, they didn't. To me, to say that, again, I talk about complacency all the time. And I'm not saying Washington's being fully complacent, but it is a tale of two different franchises when you look at the direction the Giants are going now as compared to what Washington is. Even Philadelphia. Philadelphia goes from losing the Super Bowl. What'd they do? They answered back with 3 or 4 big moves that could tell the difference of this team potentially winning a Super Bowl this season.
Oh, yeah. What do you think that Washington has done this offseason?
Really nothing when Sam Howell's your quarterback.
Okay, so besides Sam Howell, the plan has always been Sam Howell was just going to be the starting quarterback, right? They didn't go out and trade for an Aaron Rodgers type, of course, because they didn't want to give up draft picks. What they did do is sign 2 starting offensive linemen. Nick Gates of the Giants came back from injury. Was pretty good.
Nick Gates. That's really great. Nick Gates, a guy who couldn't even solidify a starting spot in New York.
Andrew Wiley? What about Andrew Wiley, the starting right tackle?
Andrew Wiley's decent.
Starting right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. They brought in Cody Barton, the former starting outside linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. He's a good player. And then what they do, they draft Emmanuel Forbes. They draft a safety in the second, and they draft offensive line in the third and fourth. Their main positions of need. They didn't go out and get quarterback because they just wanted to solidify the rest of the team around Sam Howell. You're saying that they're not a good. They didn't make any major additions because they didn't get another quarterback. What if they just believe in Sam Howell? You're
They
not at
didn't,
practice every day.
they didn't get targets. To me, Curtis Samuel is not that productive. You see the health. Curtis Samuel was productive in Carolina because he had DJ Moore taking most of the coverage away. That's
That's
my
Terry McLaurin. What about Terry
For
McLaurin?
example, everybody overhypes about Sterling Shepard and New York Giants. You want to know why Sterling Shepard was productive? When you have to put a double team when Odell Beckham Jr. is running slants or going upfield or even triple teams at time, of course you're going to get open and catch 600,
Yeah, but
700 yard
I'm not
receiving.
I'm not defending the Commanders because I think the defense is highly overrated and the offensive line is still a mess. But isn't that the same thing that they're doing with Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I think.
Like
Yeah, I
Right.
agree with that.
Terry McLaurin's stealing the attention, so
He's
Curtis
stealing the attention, but you're still not having big impact guys. There was a free agency market this year that you could have paid, and you have the affordability to pay a big guy that can turn this offense around. It is a joke that DeAndre Hopkins is playing in Tennessee, of all places, a team that's falling apart.
Are you forgetting about guys like Diami Brown or Jahan Dotson who were very
They
high draft picks?
You mentioned health, got to be healthy, and
He
yes,
is healthy. He's never had an
yeah,
injury in Washington. What about Jahan Dotson? He had an injury, yes, but he was also very, very good. He won Offensive Rookie of the Week twice last year.
but outside of occasional red zone threats, you need a team that's capable of throwing 25 touchdowns at minimal a year.
But you've never seen Sam Howell play. How do you know? Like, you've never seen him play for a
He's
full
not going to
season.
throw 25 touchdowns. He's lucky.
Daniel Jones threw 15 last season. He threw 15
Yes,
touchdowns
Daniel
in
Jones
16
threw
games.
15 to nothing. And he ran for 700 yards. Is Sam Howell going to run for 700 yards for you this season?
He ran for 700 in college. He might do it in the NFL.
College in the ACC. Come on now.
Daniel Jones played at Duke and wasn't good until his fourth season.
Yeah, I agree. He played at Duke, and that's a big reason why people diminished his value.
Listen,
Okay.
Tim, I think you're just ill-informed on the Commanders. I don't think you've watched the
games. I just don't see the potential. I really don't see this team
winning what I think.
This season.
There's a few things. Number one, thank goodness Dan Snyder's gone. That's number one.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes. I don't know how Eric Bieniemy is going to work because apparently all the players are scared of him or something. So it's too intense. That's a problem. Number three, I think the defense is extremely overrated and has been overrated ever since you guys drafted Chase Young. I just think that's the case, and I have not seen any signs besides the 2020 season to prove me wrong of that. I think there's potential with Sam Howell, but I think you're banking on someone who has both a high ceiling and a high floor, and we've seen Washington, hype up guys in the past that have come in and played quarterback, and it just hasn't worked out. Kirk Cousins was not elite with Washington. He worked out much better with Minnesota years later. There's been just so much turnover. It just seems like the Commanders are one of these teams, sort of like the Colts, that are trying to find a quarterback, but there's other flaws beyond the quarterback that's going to hold them down. And that's my concern with them. But we got 10 minutes or so. I want to run through the schedule because me and Tim both think the Giants and Eagles are both going to sweep the Commanders. Let's just go game by game here. Week 1, they host the Cardinals. I think that's a win for Washington because Arizona's a complete mess. I assume you have them starting 1-0 as well, Joe.
Yeah, I have them beating the Cardinals. I think that's going to be a good win for them. Week
2, they go on the road against the Broncos. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game because Denver doesn't score that much, but I think the Sean Payton system is going to be improved, and I think on the road, Denver's going to beat Washington.
Joey? Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think, listen, you guys haven't heard my predictions on Washington. I get a lot of what you're saying, and I think that Sam Howell is going to be the main factor. How good can he be in this Eric Bieniemy offense? I have faith, but I also think that this is one of the most difficult schedules Washington has played in a long, long time. So, yeah, I think they're totally going to lose this one.
So what record do you have them finishing with then?
I had them going, in my last prediction, I had them going about 8-9.
All right. Let me just run through what I've got. I've got Buffalo's a loss, so that's 1-2. Philly's a loss, 1-3. Bears, you'll beat the Bears, 2-3. Atlanta, I'll give you that one, 3-3. Then losses to the Giants and Eagles is 3-5. In New England and in Seattle, you'll split those, so that's 4-6. Losses to the Giants and Cowboys, you're at 4-8 already. Miami, I think, is going to be I'll give you a win. I'll give you a win. I'll give you 5-8. Then the Rams is a loss, 5-9. Jets is a loss, 5-10. I think 5-12, because then you finish San Francisco and Dallas. So how do you see them performing in the division this year? Because we've pretty much wrote them off from winning any divisional games.
Yeah, so I mean, I think listen, I'm not gonna lie. I think you guys are just completely disrespecting them because I don't think you've really paid that much attention to the actual team and roster. Like, I think if you really looked at things, you'll see that they've really improved in their much needed positions like linebacker, corner, offensive line. The offensive line is still a mess, but that's definitely the weakest position. Like, if you look at the roster top to bottom, they've got so many playmakers. It's just about how they perform. I think that they will get swept by the Eagles. I think that they will split with the Giants because both games with the Giants were extremely close last season, and it seems like Washington got kind of screwed with that penalty in the second game. But Washington was also trash in that game, so I don't really care about that. I think that they will split with the Giants. I think they'll lose at New York, and I think they'll win at home. I think that they will split with Dallas. I think they're going to beat Dallas on Thanksgiving Day because every year Washington has one big game on prime time that they completely dominate a really good team. And I think that's going to be the Cowboys game this year. It's happened all 3 seasons of the Ron Rivera era, and I think that's going to happen this year. So I think they'll split with every team except for Philly.
The Eagles are not losing at home again to watch. And a lot of that, you mentioned the defense, a lot of that was just self-inflicted by the Eagles. I mean, you got Quez Watkins just fumbling the ball when he's just like running down the field. Like there was just horrible things that happened in that game.
Yeah, Philly's a much better team. I have no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. We got a few minutes left. Let's transition quickly to the NBA. I'll go to Tim first and then Joe to finish. So James Harden saying that he'll never play another game for Daryl Morey again. There's rumors that now he's interested in potentially playing in China. So I don't know what's going on there with Harden. I know Joe's a Nets fan, so we've experienced this before. Tim, is James Harden even going to be playing in the NBA this coming season? Is it going to be with Philly? Is it going to be with someone else? Is he going overseas? What's happening here?
Well, it's going to be with somebody else, let's be honest. But it makes me wonder, who's the dramatic one? Was it really James Harden, or was it people like Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons when you look in the big picture of all the drama when you got him in Brooklyn? I would say James Harden really was the most dramatic one of them all. But I mean, there's no way he's not playing in the NBA next season. I just can't see it happening. Rather he comes in a camp overweight again and does whatever like he did in the past. That doesn't matter. James Harden's still a very good NBA caliber player. And yeah, I'm sure he'll make a boatload of money if he goes and plays in China. But I honestly just see him going to another quote unquote powerhouse team that he'll probably end up not even coming close to an NBA Finals with.
Joe, how about you?
I think James Harden is a perpetual loser when it comes to his basketball career. I think so many of these NBA players nowadays are just afraid of the grind. And like when they lose a playoff series, they're like, I guess I can't win a game here. Like it's actually insanity. I think that James Harden is probably going to go wherever he can get the easiest ring. I think it's probably going to be, I mean, listen, I'm not sure what's going on with Dame at all. It doesn't seem like Dame is going to be going to Miami actually, but he probably will end up there. I think that if he doesn't go there, I think I'd look at Miami as a fit for Harden. If not, I'd see like Phoenix. He's going somewhere though. Maybe the Clippers. I know he's interested in. I think that wherever he goes, he'll go. He'll lose the playoff series in a year or two. He'll be requesting another trade. I think it's just a pathetic perpetual cycle. Also, Tim, what are your favorite teams? I know Eddie's. I don't know yours.
Okay, so I'm a diehard Yankees fan, which is absolute.
Sadly, I'm also a Yankee fan. I stopped watching.
Feel the pain, fire cash, and that's the next time I'll go to Yankee Stadium. We talked about that a few episodes ago with Rio. I am obviously a diehard Giants fan, and this is where it'll start getting weird. I am a Cleveland Cavaliers fan.
Okay, I like Donovan Mitchell, so
because of Shaquille O'Neal a very long time ago. I was a big Shaq kid, and also personal connections with Donovan Mitchell, so that makes it even more of a perk. And then on the hockey side, I'm a Blackhawks fan. Don't ask me how, just like the Blackhawks. I'm not a Rangers fan. So,
alrighty,
weird combos for me, but
yeah,
what it is.
I mean, I like the Mets and Eagles. That's probably the most bizarre combo that exists. But yeah, it's been a good episode, and we got to talk about the Commanders and had quite the feisty debate about Antonio Gibson. So that was a lot of fun. Joe, let us know, where can we find the Command Center?
Yeah, so the Command Center is on YouTube. I just recorded episode 5 before this. Talked a little bit about Sam Howell being named the starter, and then also their joint practices with Baltimore, which was a lot of fun. Also, Mark Andrews body slammed one of our corners, and now he's a torn rotator cuff. So not sure if he should be going to jail or not. That seems pretty messed up. But and then on Instagram at the Command Center and on Twitter at the Command Center. But yeah, good talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. That'll do it for this episode. Reminder, August 30th live, we will have our fantasy football draft, so stay tuned for that episode. That might be our next one, but until next time, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of Sports Speak Live. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.